Thank you so much for joining us. I appreciate it. Hello, Arlene. Thank you for joining us. We are Elements of Wellness, and I have brought Cheryl over to you guys because she is a fellow girl on the left. So I met her last year while we did our project. And Cheryl, I don't remember, you're not part of the second edition, are you?
No, I'm not.
No. Okay, awesome. But you're part of the magazine that's coming out.
Yes, yes, I'm very
Yeah.
excited.
So we're super excited about that. And Cheryl brings a really unique experience to the table when we're talking about hormones, when we're talking about work, life, balance, that mythical creature that we can never get a hold of. And she's got experience with eating disorders, and she's going to be touching on alcohol use as well and how it affects us on a cellular level. So, Cheryl, I'm just going to pass the stage over to you, and let's start with what's going well. So, introduce yourself first, and then tell me what's going well. And Arlene, if you're available once Cheryl is done, I want to know what's going well for you before we dive into the content.
Um, so I'm Cheryl. I am from Houston, Texas. I am a mom. I am a wife. I am an entrepreneur, and I also work in corporate America. And like Jody said, I have a very interesting, although it's not always pleasant, history a lot of my life. And I'm here tonight to talk about how that affected my life, how it has affected my body, and how I have recovered from a lot of those things. So I'm super excited to be here. What is going well? Well, I got my mom's taxes filed today, which was a huge accomplishment, and got an awful lot of things done. I got everything done on my to-do list so far, and this is probably the last thing on it today. So it's all good.
I know I had one of those days as well. So, Arlene, what's going well in your week today?
Um, Good question. What's going well? I'm continuing to be consistent with my gym classes, my boot camp classes, and my yoga. So that's going well. Yoga is sometimes I have a lot of pain, and this week so far, I don't. I am using my sauna blanket, yeah, a little bit more. And so I think a little bit less inflammation. So yeah, I think that's going well.
Arlene, I love that for you. And you know that I understand chronic pain for sure.
Yes.
And been going, I'm finally strong enough now to like add the gym into my rehab. So that's been the last month now. And I just hired a performance trainer who like manually stretches you out. And it was my third session with him today. And he works on you for an hour. And they finally, this is what's going well in my day today, finally got some movement in that hip and it popped. And I swear to God, I gained like an inch and a half. And I was
Wow.
able to get some hip rotations in there. And it just felt so good. So, like, I hear you with the
That's great.
consistency. I hear you with like, the inflammation is down, you're starting to get results. Like that's so good for you. And I resonate with everything that you're saying. So, all
Thank
right,
you.
Cheryl, let's dive in.
Well, like I said, I'm Cheryl. On the outside, I look like everybody else. But on the inside, I have carried some secrets in my life. What most people don't know about me is that for most of my life, I was an active bulimic and also an alcoholic. So for over 40 years, bulimia was my secret life. It shaped my body, my hormones, my relationships, and my sense of myself in ways I didn't understand until much later in life. And most of that time, sadly, alcohol was right there alongside it. But I'm here today, almost 6 years into recovery from both of those things. And I want to talk honestly about what that journey did to my body, all the way from childhood into menopause, because I believe that that story belongs in a conversation like this one. I am not a doctor or a researcher. What I am is someone who's lived this, survived it, come out the other side, and I have a body that has a lot to say and a voice that's finally ready to speak up. My story doesn't start in college, not after a bad breakup, or pressure to be thin for a sport. It starts at age 7. I grew up in a home where food was the enemy. My mom had a deeply toxic relationship with food my entire life. The message I absorbed was that food makes you fat, fat is bad, so food is bad. So at 7 years old, I started throwing up my food. And this escalated quickly. It soon became something that I started doing multiple times a day. Binging and purging. Pretty soon it was just my normal secret life. I became so good at hiding it. I had this entire secret life around this behavior before I was even old enough to understand what I was doing to myself. No one knew about my bulimia, but that secrecy came at a cost. I lived in shame, constant, quiet, and exhausting shame. I obsessed over food every single day. I would starve myself, and then I would binge, and I would hate myself, and I would purge. Then I would start it all over again. And the whole time, smiling on the outside, it was showing up, and I just looked fine. By the time I was a teenager, I was already experiencing physical effects on my body. I was always so tired. I had cavities, just the dentist had no idea what was going on. My digestive system basically stopped functioning normally. I would have a bowel movement maybe once a week. I had so much anxiety that it was just like a baseline of anxiety. That was just who I was just this anxious person. I didn't connect any of that to my bulimia. Maybe I did though, I don't know, maybe, but I couldn't stop. That's the thing about this addiction, this compulsive behavior. You can know it's hurting you, you can still feel completely powerless to stop it. So what does 40 years of this actually do to a body? Well, my heart would race and flutter irregularly. That's the electrolyte imbalance, the potassium that your body loses every time you purge. I didn't know that then, but what I did know is my heart just didn't always feel right. I always felt very shaky. My teeth were a disaster. I had so many cavities. I had TMJ from years of purging. My esophagus was damaged. I developed a chronic cough that I was clearing my throat all the time. Just it became so normal. I stopped noticing it. I only realized when other people would mention it. My digestive system had essentially shut down its natural rhythm. I had destroyed metabolism. I couldn't build muscle tone no matter what I did. I constantly battled weight gain. And the worst part was that just like the normal part of life, so going through puberty and then, pregnancy and then getting older, those few pounds just sent me to a spiral every single time. I remember being a young teenager, just body doing what it's supposed to do. But I responded by just binging and purging all the time, sometimes 10 times a day. A few pounds felt like the end of the world to me. It wasn't my vanity. It was a disorder that had completely hijacked my relationship with my body. My periods were irregular for most of my life. My body was running on empty. It was nutritionally and hormonally depleted. My reproductive system reflected that. I had trouble getting pregnant. The hormone chaos didn't just affect my cycle. It showed up like mood swings, the anxiety that never went away, and such deep, dark depression. I had my first suicide attempt when I was 15, and that just is one example of how this disorder left untreated in a body that is nutritionally depleted and hormonally dysregulated can take you to the very edge. The mental load of hiding this was its own kind of destruction. Between hiding my bulimia and later hiding how much I was drinking, I was running 2 secret lives simultaneously. The anxiety was relentless. And then the binging and purging and my drinking would numb the anxiety, but then it created more shame and it just created more anxiety. It was just this vicious cycle that never stopped. And then there was my body image, and I still struggle with that today. I am 6 years into recovery from my eating disorder and almost 6 years into recovery from my alcoholism. But I haven't purged in 6 years. But when I look in the mirror, I'm still shocked by the person I see there. I weigh probably about 30 pounds more than I did when I was actively bulimic. And part of my brain still thinks this is wrong. This isn't how you're supposed to look. Body dysmorphia does not, unfortunately, just disappear when the behavior stops. It lingers, and it's something that I continue to work on. In my active disorder, that distorted self-image touched every part of my life. I had no confidence. I was ashamed of my body. That shame bled into my intimate relationships. I hated myself, and I made choices that reflected how little I valued myself at that. And underneath it all, I always heard my mom. She had this toxic relationship with food. Her weapon was words. If I gained a few pounds, she'd say, "You sure are thick in the middle." And if I was going through a pretty thin phase, she'd say, well, it's a good thing you're skinny. You can wear those naked dresses. There was no version of my body that she approved of. So I just felt like I was never, ever good enough for her. This just created depression and anxiety from the time I was a small child. So I know that I turned to binging and purging to control how I looked in a desperate attempt to finally be perfect. But it didn't work. And as I got older, as I approached menopause, everything got worse. It was like everything just culminated in this just the cyclone, and my body was carrying decades of damage. I had my electrolytes were depleted, the damage to my esophagus, my teeth, my broken metabolism. And now I was going through menopause and I was drinking all the time, and I had these weight issues from my drinking, and my body was in crisis. And my bulimia just got worse and worse. And I would literally binge and purge, and I would purge every single thing that I ate for a period of my life for years. And I was shaky all the time, anxious all the time. Having no food in my stomach intensified the alcohol, and I developed liver damage. So that just got terrible. So they just fed each other, and it was just a huge mess. And I was just a walking storm of rage and anxiety, and me very unrecognizable to myself. I hated myself. I want to share something that has stayed with me for decades. So when I was 11 years old, this was in 1984, I saw this movie on TV. It was an ABC movie, and it starred Meredith Baxter Burney, and she played this woman who suffered from bulimia, secret life with bulimia. And I was 11, and I remember watching that and thinking, that is going to be me. I could see my future in that movie, and I could not see a way out of it. And I was right until I was 46. And that's when everything changed for me. But before I go into that, I want to hand it over to Jody, because what was happening to my body hormonally during all that time is something that she can speak to a lot better than I can. And what she's going to share with you will give you the clinical picture behind everything I've just described.
Thank you, Cheryl, for sharing part of your story. If you want to know the full story of Cheryl's, you can get your copy of Girl on the Left. So one thing that really speaks out to me with Cheryl's story is women think that fasting can create hormonal balance, and there is a really big myth around that, because we are different. We have anywhere from 21-day cycle to 42-day cycle, give or take. And if we're fasting in the wrong time of those cycles, we can actually cause more damage. So in Cheryl's case, fasting all the time. So when you put the body into survival, whether it's fasting for 3 days, doing a juice cleanse, doing a water cleanse, whatever it is, or if you have an eating disorder, the priority is survival. And hormone production gets shut down because the body says, well, we can't support life, so there's no making life. And a lot of misconceptions is that our cycle stops when we go through menopause and postmenopause, when we no longer get a period, and that's not true. We don't magically become like men and have a 24-hour cycle. We will always have that 21 to 42-day cycle, depending on what you were. We just don't get the show. We don't magically just stop producing hormones. And what happens is our adrenals and our fat cells take over, making our estrogens, just like they did pre-puberty. Now I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to show you a test that I do. This is a dried urine hormonal test, and I can see the androgens, the gluteocorticoids, and the mineral corticoids. I know that when we're in acute stress, when the body is like just under 6 months or less of stress, everything will be flat out pedal to the metal. However, when you live a really hard life, when you have had life happen to you, and I say this because I'm not one of those coaches that believes that life happens for you. Yes, we can make anything good that happened to us, but I believe life does happen, and it is up to us to whether we're going to make good out of it. So when we're on the flat line, I know that this has been a really hard life, and at 6 months or longer that you have been under chronic stress. And this is really important because how can the adrenals make your hormones and keep you balanced if you are chronically stressed? So this lady here, she's low in the DHEA, she's low in testosterone, she's normal in the DHT. This is normal, okay? If it gets elevated, this is what causes hair loss. So like we don't want this elevated, okay? So this is actually a good thing. And then she's kind of on the lower side, lower side, lower side, low, 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 lower side, lower side. And then when we get into the adrenals, they are barely functioning. Now, this is a second test of her. So this is why it's like adrenals are repairing. But I know that this lady has had a severely stressful life, whether it be trauma, whether it be grief, whether it be like the last 25 years has just been one thing or another. This takes time to repair. So, what are the priorities for making hormones? So, you're going to have the fatigue, you're going to have the decision fatigue, you're going to have the brain fog, you're going to have the body pain because the estrogen drops. We're going to have forgetfulness, we're going to have the clumsiness. Insomnia, sleep 2 hours, be awake for 4, and then, oh, the alarm is going off soon. So just get through the day. So when we have eating disorders or when we're fasting at the wrong times, this is actually what we can cause in our body if we do this enough. So Cheryl, I'm going to give you the mic back.
Okay, thank you. So I will wrap up with how does someone who has been doing this since age 7 finally stop? For me, it started with truly being seen, probably for the first time in my life. New relationship with a partner who looked at me and saw a person worth loving, not a body to be critiqued or a problem to be managed. I had never before experienced unconditional support like that. Not even from my own mother, who, when I was 18 and I was throwing up blood and terrified, and I did go to her and said, I had been throwing up since I was 7. And she said, well, you should probably stop. So I carried that response with me for almost 30 more years. And when I finally found myself in a relationship with someone who actually showed up for me, it cracked something open in me. And the work I had already been doing in my recovery from alcoholism had quietly been building a foundation for recovery from my eating disorder. And I had the courage to walk into my doctor's office and say, I need help with this too. So addressing my alcoholism first gave me the strength to approach so many other parts of my life that needed work. One recovery made all of these others possible. And physically, my body started coming back to life in ways I didn't know were possible. My metabolism has recovered. I started swimming and I have muscle tone for the first time in my life. I avoided the dentist for decades out of shame, and I couldn't sit in the chair and listen. I couldn't handle the questions. Over the past 2 years, I have had 34 dental visits, multiple crowns. I had 2 implants, including one had to have a bone graft in my jaw because of extensive damage. Last month, I got an all clear from the dentist. She gave me my exam and said no concerns. And I cried in her chair. What has helped me get there is not one thing, but it's everything working together. Life coaching, affirmation, slow, unglamorous work of learning to love myself for who I actually am, not for who my mother needed to be or who my eating disorder told me I should be. Weekly therapy, psychiatrist, gastroenterologist who's helped me understand what 40 years of purging has done to my digestive system and how to help heal that. I'm building something also. I'm building a platform and a voice. I've been part of the anthology project that Jody mentioned. I am writing a book about my own recovery and the life that's opened up on the other side of my journey. And I'm standing in rooms like this in front of women telling the truth. And that is not the life I saw for myself when I was a teenager watching a movie about a woman who died from her bulimia. My relationship with my body is still complicated. I still have body dysmorphia. I still have moments in the mirror where it's really hard, but I swim and I move my body because I want to keep it, not to punish it. I go to the dentist and I show up for my appointments. I ask for help. Those things are huge for me. And what do I wish I would have known when I was 30 or 40? I wish I had known the shame was not mine to carry, that my body wasn't the problem, that it was only trying to survive the problems, that recovery was not about becoming somebody new, but finally getting to know the real me. And I wish someone had told me that it is never, never, ever too late for those changes. So before, if you have any questions, I just want to say, if anything I have said today sounds familiar, if you heard your own story in any part of this, or you know someone that you love who is struggling, you're not broken. They're not broken. You're not weak. You're not beyond help. And I was 7 years old when this started. I was a child. I was 46 before I found my way out of it. And that's nearly 4 decades of hiding, shame, of a body that was suffering, while I smiled and showed up and kept going. And I'm here, and I'm well, and I'm still healing. Recovery is not a straight line. It took 34 dental visits, weekly therapy, and many other things. It took people who love me and me finally deciding I was worth it. Really, thank you for listening to my story.
Thank you, Cheryl. And one of the biggest takeaways that I get from hearing your story all the time is it's never too late. You know, you went through 40 decades. 4 decades.
Decades, yeah.
There's our comic relief. Almost 4 decades of dysfunction and shame, and body dysmorphia is real. I not as severe, and I always tell clients, like, never compare pain, right? Like, pain is pain. But I mean, I learned that my excessive attendance of the gym in high school, and like 95 pounds, and still wasn't good enough, still wasn't skinny enough. And being 46 myself, it's just, I look in the mirror and I'm like, this body knows how to work. It walks, it gets me from point A to point B. This body is good. Like, it is about showing up and doing the work and being able to do some of those somatics as well. So if anybody wants to get a hold of you, how is the best way for them to reach out to you?
Well, I'm on Facebook. That's probably the best way. My name is Cheryl Heller, and my name is my Facebook name. And I had love to take messages and comments, and I share a bit of my story there. And I also have started putting myself out on TikTok, and I'm Radiant Cheryl on TikTok. And
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you. Okay, so I am going to go ahead and stop the live stream before we get into the questions with the people that have joined us backstage. So again, if this training has been useful, we do these types of trainings every 2 weeks on Tuesdays. Sometimes we do 7 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. Other times we're dealing with different time zones, so we jump on a little bit earlier. So if you want to register for the next following trainings, know that we will be here. And then that way, even if you can't attend live, you're going to get the recording sent to you immediately once we're finished.